Rachel, for inviting me, and thanks everyone for showing up. Um, I chose to do this little presentation on wellness in the workplace during COVID, which, like everything else in the world that's going on and on campus, it's fluid. So there's information out there. Most of it is stuff that the administration's already doing. So I kind of went a little further in my research, and I'm mixing up some individual stuff that people can do, some stuff that divisions and departments can think about doing. And then the administration piece I've kind of thrown into what the wellness committee could possibly think about. And just FYI, for anyone that doesn't know, I am on the wellness committee. So I feel like I'm being bossy here on saying we need to do this, and we haven't had a meeting for a while. We could potentially have a huge role in this if we chose to go that route, I feel. So right now, as you can see, it says globally half of the world's population is in some form of isolation or some stage of that isolation right now, which has really been detrimental to health and wellness, physical health, wellness, and all the dimensions that come with it, which I'm briefly going to talk about here. So this list right here I threw out, most people have seen this list, and there's a variety of topics that people put on this list depending upon who your source is. Okay, so these are the ones that generally appear on most lists, and the only reason I put it on here is because if you really look at this, I think that COVID is a great example of how the wellness dimensions intertwine, and how if you don't have a piece of all, there's going to be some type of wellness or health issue. And if you look at that, socially, we're distant. Socially, we're isolated. Financially, people are at a loss. Some people can't go to church, whatever it is. And this is affecting everything. The environmental piece could just be maybe our campus. It also could be the virus, what's going on around. All this stuff affects our physical health and the mental health, which is the one that I have starred right there. Interestingly, Inside Higher Ed just did a survey of the presidents, university presidents, and 90% of them said that they felt that mental health was the most important thing that we need to be dealing with on campuses coming in. So that's going to come up again a little bit. I just threw this physical thing in here because I'm not going to really go into physical health. There's so much that could be talked about here in this 15-20 minutes, right? I just want everyone to know, and if you're taking this back anywhere, that 10 minutes, you will get benefits no matter what it is. If it's a 10-minute walk, whether it's anything. So physical health does not mean that you have to be going to the gym. You know, it's a walk around the block. And all those things can be a detriment to the other dimensions, or they can be a benefit, obviously. So we need to kind of think about all of them when we're talking about wellness in general. So the Global Health Institute, or the Global Wellness Institute, excuse me, just put out a big white paper on global wellness, not necessarily for college campuses, but I think a lot of stuff in their white paper kind of bled over into the other research that I did. And I really agree with what they've said here, and I'm going to break it down a little bit more, that the two most important things, well, first off, there has to be teamwork for wellness to be effective, especially right now. The number one thing, and this needs to be a core value, it would be nice if it was a core value in a strategic plan for a college, but maybe this is a core value for a division or a department, but there has to be a priority shift. If we go on like we are with each person takes care of themselves, we don't make this a teamwork thing, the success is going to be a lot harder to reach. And the number two thing, which we know just in general from behavior change, is that we can give all the education in the world, we can put up every flyer in the world, but wellness and health are impossible without people changing a behavior. So that's really where the work needs to happen, if that makes sense to people. So I broke it down. There's a mix of things, and they talk about in health promotion, and that it needs to be individual, well, not necessarily health promotion, but health promotion slash just presentation, that the behavior change needs to be individual, it needs to be division slash department, and it needs to be administration, or we'll call that policy wide. We do know that the most effective is the administration and what they can do for us, but that's also the most expensive and the most time consuming. So with that said, the mix of the three is the next best thing we can do. As an individual, I don't have a lot on here. I think the wellness committee and the administration could, and the divisions will bleed into this. Hopefully, if we could do this right, the people need to learn, and not only learn, but I should have highlighted the word practice. And that comes back to the behavior change. Practice the healthy behaviors. And it's not just nutrition. It's not just physical activity, although they help the others, but the sleep, the quiet time, the meditation, all those things that come along with it, the learning ergonomics, whatever it is for the workplace. So breaking out of that, which I think most people know that, but the second thing individually that we could do if we don't have support is to nourish the relationships that we have, because the isolation is going to be really hard, not only on students, but on faculty and staff. It's hard sometimes. And I don't know if you all feel it, but I feel it a little bit. You know, we get on these Zoom meetings, but there's something missing, right? So nourishing relationships, going beyond doing what you can do, practicing compassion with people and caring and understanding that everyone is in a different place, not only your coworkers, but the students. And again, that'll come back up. And this all ties together for the individuals in, I think, the idea that people need to realize that we have to be proactive. Number one, you have to be proactive individually, but we can't help other people until we're empowered with our own health. So we've got to take that step individually. But how do we get there? We all need a little bit of help, right? And since we decided to talk about on campus with this, I'm going to throw in a little bit of what I know tied into what I found out through looking up on this topic right now. The one thing that is pretty much proven in worksite health promotion is that it's a top-down responsibility, and that I will say the supervisors, the division heads, worksite wellness programs are much more successful. The employees are much more successful if the supervisors are involved, if they're taking part in the programs, if they're promoting the programs. But if it's just a few employees over here that want to do the walking, want to do that, we're less likely to be successful. So for anyone that's out there and that's listening, if you have any influence or walk away, talking to your division heads, they need to be a part of it for it to be successful. And that's not out there in COVID research. That's just worksite health promotion research. One of the things divisions and departments really need to do for not only the faculty, but their students is to, compassion I talked about earlier, but we need to be consistent in acknowledging people's concerns. So whatever your division or your department decides that consistent form of communication is, it needs to be acknowledged because it's truly out there. And back to the president saying that they want that mental health is the most important thing, that's because that's what they're hearing from the students. Okay, there's just so much anxiety out there, the finances, the not knowing what's going on, the feeling like they can't reach out because it's virtual, to a variety of reasons. There could be change, they're not they're scared of online, whatever it is. So that's important. It's also important to know the background of our students, because we know that minority populations are more affected by COVID, and not only physically, but financially. They don't have the resources, so that's going to affect them emotionally, mentally, all those things. So kind of maybe knowing to the best we can that what the background of our students, so we know who might need a little bit more help. We all know that some things go on no matter what it is, but a lot of them will hide it and we won't know it. Another suggestion, and I thought it was a great idea when I read this, was as opposed to these letters that we're sending out and these texts, that video emails are a great idea. And they're a great idea in the division department because the reason they're successful is because people want someone that knows them. So if the person that pops up on the scene is, no offense, I'll just throw Andy out there. Students don't know who he is, okay? Or maybe they don't know who the provost is. But if it comes from your division head or your professor or someone, it's gonna feel a little more personal and they're more likely to reach out, okay? So those are important things for students, I think. This next couple things, I'm trying to talk really fast. I talk really fast anyway. Is some of the suggestions I read out there, and I think that they were great ideas, is this no agenda meeting, whether it's short or not. And you could kind of compare that to like a water cooler talk. Hey, let's just meet for 5 minutes. What's going on? To kind of tap into everybody, because we're all going here and there, right? And and it's more personal. It doesn't have to be about work, right? So that's a great idea. With the stress, with the mental issues, mindfulness meetings, mindfulness breaks are a great thing to, I think, to get going in divisions and departments. And again, they can be short, okay? They can be learned. There's different ways you can do that. You're going to see that a lot of this is going to bleed over in a minute to wellness and administration and what we can get out of them. But if we can't, these are things to think about. We should be, as faculty, gatekeepers, means noticing what's going on with our students, intervening when needed, be able to network, be able to refer them to the disability services, to the social work program, wherever we can get help. Okay, so we need to be really mindful about what's going on. Next thing, which is going to lead into it, is, and this is all over the place on LC's campus in my mind right now. We have a wellness committee. I'm going to guess very few people on this call right now knows who's even in charge of it or who's on it. Yeah, that's what I thought. So it would behoove the departments to learn who those people are and to work closely with them. But the wellness committee could do a better job of working with the division heads too. And so some of that stuff is student oriented, but some of it is faculty oriented right there. But it all goes back to, if the faculty is not strong, we can't help these students. So I'm going to kind of move on here to what I defined as the administration or the wellness committee. Much of this is out of our hands, but possibly the wellness committee could step up and have a stronger role on campus right now, which I personally think would be a great time to do it. We take a little bit of revamping. Obviously, it's a volunteer committee, but from being on it, I think personally I also feel it could be a lot stronger. So the visibility is an important thing for this, and this is through the research, that wellness committees, whether they're a big organization on a big campus or whether they're small like ours, visibility is key, so that you all know, or divisions know, who to turn to, who to contact if you want someone to come in and do a presentation, or you have a topic that you want talked about, or you want a workshop on it, anything, right? And then they could work with you as a possibility. But I see you shaking your head, but you weren't even sure who it is, Rachel. Is that true?
I'm not sure who's on it. I do know of its existence, and I would have I would love to have the opportunity to ask folks on the wellness committee to come and talk more about well-being and wellness, like in the CTL and stuff. So
yeah, so it makes me wonder if you don't even know.
I know you're on it.
I am on it. Yeah. And there's probably a few people out there know, maybe they put a faculty or staff on the committee, so they may know, but we should be so much more visible, and especially right now.
Who else is on it?
Well, Doug Steele's is the head of it. Mm-hmm. I'm on it. Vicki from Human Resources, Lacey from Human Resources. There's a student that works a social work student that works with Doug on it. One of the students that's a head of student government is also on it. Tracy Collins is on it. And we had a nursing professor. It was Tracy Flynn, but she's off campus now. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think she's been on it. She wasn't on it last spring. So we don't even have a nursing person on there right now that I'm aware of. Again, we haven't met since beyond Zoom since March, but so it could be bigger. We could do better. It could be bigger. And with the virtual stuff, it would be nice to have some kind of virtual whizzes and people, because some of the things that we have done that were successful, we had the STEPS program last year, which some of this stuff like school may need to go, and like all the conferences are, may need to go virtual. So that's something that we need to learn to get in our back pocket, I think would be successful. So anyways, I believe the visibility, I know it is key. Okay, so that's something that needs to maybe be worked on or could be worked on. And helping people set goals. And why I put that on there is because a lot of what goes on is committees just talk, right? But we aren't setting measurable goals. And what I mean by that is physical activity is important, but why are they doing it? Okay, for stress, we can tie in all these dimensions if we set goals for the right reasons and train people how these dimensions work together. And yeah, if you get out and walk, it's going to help your sleep. It's going to help your emotional health. It doesn't always have to be about weight control, but we have to set some stuff to get moving on that. Okay, so some of the really quick things that could be done. And again, if you don't want to think of this as an administration job or a wellness committee job, you could maybe think of about something for your division or your department. We know that education and awareness has to be out there, but we also know from health promotion, it is the least effective way of making a behavior change. I tell the students in my health promotion class, you go ahead and put up every poster there is on campus. It's the least effective form of marketing a topic. So, so these are great ideas: text messages, newsletters, posters. People have to know. We have to educate them, but we really have to train them on how to follow through. Right? When people do, they change, and we know that. So. These committees, and this is it's around, like I said, it comes back with the divisions and stuff. They need to be regularly communicating what's going on. Some of the ideas that are thrown, so some more of these lunch and learn workshops, working together. What does your division want for health screenings? I don't know how hard it is about COVID to come in and take someone's temperature, or, if we come over, can we do flu shots, right? Because the things like the mammogram stuff that, gets done through wellness sometimes and through Vicky, that stuff is really popular. So together organizing is some practical stuff that could get done. So I would hope that the division heads would think about that a little bit. And I wrote that double up thing on there because there are people that are not motivated to be well or healthy. If you could throw a couple things together, like that lunch and learn is everybody bring a recipe and we're going to talk about nutrition. And we're going to have a 5-minute mindfulness talk. So doubling up different ideas. Yeah, there's a health screening today, but also so-and-so is going to come in and help us set goals for a month on our nutrition or whatever it is, or talk about sleep. So if maybe you can get someone by doubling up ideas with some of this stuff. Just a thought. Okay, so number 2, I put this on there because it was after the education and awareness, and I already talked about it. We need to somehow, some way, campus-wide promote more access to mental health. There's a stigma with it, but it's real. Obviously, we all know, and it's going to increase. So that's something that needs to hopefully be pushed. Host the office screenings, going into the office, doing biometrics, doing whatever you can to help people. They don't want to go out. They don't want to see people possibly, or they're too busy because they don't want to be around people. So doing these things in offices is an idea. Again, host the workshops in office is a great idea. Everything doesn't have to be huge. Of course, we need bodies, but we're all going to be helping in a little bit more right now, obviously. And if it's a core value or priority, hopefully that's not that big a deal. Some of these wellness challenges, there could be more of those. And if they do, the recommendation is they should be more buddy systems, more teams if we can pull it off, obviously with social distancing, but we need to create community and teamwork. So everything's not individual. I did this, I did that, right? Webinars, because of virtual, are great ideas. And there's so much going on virtually, and that's changing, obviously. But you can assess. You need to assess before you know anything, obviously. I'm going to throw this out there because I just used the term assess real quickly. You could ask someone on the committee to do whatever your office thought was important, right, to come in. The wellness committee, it just finally, after a year, got through IRB, and you're going to be getting a 10-question multiple choice survey from the wellness committee on what your priorities are. And from that, hopefully we'll learn some, what people want, and maybe we can have some people go out and speak on some of this stuff or come in, whatever it is. So please fill that out and encourage people when you see it, so we can find out that what we think is right. And I've noticed that from the meetings, everyone kind of has their priority. Oh, we need to do this, we need to talk about that, So it'll be nice to see campus-wide. It's going to go to all the faculty and staff here within the next 3 weeks, I hope. Okay, so some of the other ideas is have some coaching, and for all of you that don't know or do know what coaching is, it's become a general term for people that assist people in making behavior change and setting goals. Don't think of it as an athlete. And it's generally done one-on-one, but you could change the platforms a lot. Right now, we could have things that were socially distanced. You can do it in groups, okay? But it holds people accountable for goal setting and tell me what went wrong. They're going to talk it out. It's kind of a motivational interviewing approach, but you can use apps and everything for it. So it would be really nice if we have people that could maybe do some of that stuff for some of them. I do have some students that have been through the classes, and I've always wanted to be able to integrate it into faculty and staff. So that's a thought. The physical activity offerings, because like it or not, it affects everything. It's the one thing that is a free pill. Okay, it's physical activity. It affects everything. So maybe creating some more socially distanced, and notice I use the term activities, some socially distant activities that just got people moving on site, or to add some off-site options, some on-demand stuff. Threw number 9 on there because of incentives. Well, we all know we don't have any money, right? It is the most effective thing for getting people to buy into wellness. Sadly, people are motivated by it. And if we did have money, reimagining on what people could do socially distanced. And I threw up streaming services, meal kits as options for prizes. So I guess what I put below there is what could people come up with, and maybe people have ideas here, maybe it's something that needs to be discussed, is what are some no cost ideas? What is no cost that it feels like a benefit? Is it free parking, since the parking prices went up, right? What could the campus offer? Your spouse gets free access to the fitness center or something like that. So there's stuff out there that can be done. The 10th, I only did 10. I thought were the most important things that really are doable or thinkable, was the 6-week window. What this means is if people are serious about wellness when we get back on campus, the first 6 weeks are the most important. Whoever's in charge of it, whether it is yourself and working with people, whether it's you're the head of a division department, whether it's a wellness committee, the first 6 weeks have to be follow through. How are you doing? Here's what we're going to add. It's the most important time frame in keeping people. If we throw something out there and 2 months later we throw something out, much less likely to be effective. Okay. So there you go. So my key takeaways from this is that this involves teamwork. Everyone's got to be talking, and it has to be a priority. That if wellness is not a campus-wide core value, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge. So if you can take your personal values, if you're proactive about it, hopefully it'll trickle down, right? Or trickle up if we speak loud enough to the people above us. Behavior change is the key. We're not going to get people well. It's impossible without changing behavior. Active movement, active doing anything different besides lip service. Okay? Teaching people how to make the changes, giving them the tools. whether it's teaching them the 10 tiny habits or what true SMART goals look like, things like that. Okay. And right now, the mental health is the most important thing for students. Okay. Setting the goals that are specific and measurable. We also know by goal setting, whether we do this ourselves, whether we do it as a wellness committee, whether we do it as a division. If they're not specific and we can't measure them, they're less likely to happen. And you can set a goal in any of those dimensions of wellness. Much more likely if you say by Friday, okay, everyone's going to bring one recipe. Next Friday, Jennifer's going to make her recipe, whatever it is. I'm just throwing that out there. By Friday, everybody went to bed half an hour early on Thursday. The next Friday, everybody went to bed a half an hour early on Thursday and Friday, whatever it is, right? Okay. And the only thing we can really control, this is my final point, is being role models. I should have put proactive role models, but by being role models, hopefully, it bleeds down, because we can't control a lot beyond it, right? So that's really the key takeaways, and in general, the ideas that I came up with. Okay. Does anyone have any comments, suggestions, ideas?
There is a comment over here from Christina that she'd be interested in the wellness committee. So
Christina, I don't have your names up. Who's Christina's last name?
Brando Subis, and maybe
You're Ed, isn't she?
Yeah, Ed Division.
Okay, awesome. When we have a meeting, I'm going to kind of bring up, because another thing is we need to be a little more diverse in it. So it would be really nice to have some people beyond the very small group that we have. I don't know what the rules are, but it's volunteer. How could there be too many rules, right? So thanks, Christina. I'm going to throw you out there for that. Anyone else?
I always have questions if nobody else is jumping on here, and then we can, so maybe you can think of your questions while I'm asking this one. And that is our President Pemberton, seems like she is enthusiastic, at least about wellness. And do you feel that this is sort of the right time to expand? It seems like all of the jigsaw pieces are in the right place. There's a real need to expand the wellness committee and what it's doing. And it seems like there should be administrative buy-in to the committee to kind of make it something that's a little bit more, that has a little bit more diversity and oomph to it.
Right.
Are you feeling that, or I don't know if you want to.
As far as I know, and Doug may know different, since the committee has been formed, we've just, here you go. I haven't heard anything from administration about the wellness committee. And like I said, he might know different, but it's never been voiced at a meeting. We've just kind of been left on our own to do whatever. I know that some of it, this is also tied in a little bit to human resources. Some of the stuff we do, our page goes through there, and there is now a lack of funds. So my guess is that they would love us to do more, but we're going to have to be creative about how it's done with the financial situation. So if that helps, and you're right, she is. I think she'd be 100% on us doing it, but does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for the committee.
I do too. And I would, like I said, I would like to see us do a little more. I don't know where the rest of the committee is at right now. I will know within the next month as far as their heads. One thing we are trying to do is, we used to have a health fair on campus every year. Yeah. We're bringing that back sans COVID this year. Okay. So little things going on, and there are other things, but it hasn't been specific to what we're talking about.
All right, well, thank you. I think given the time, we should move over to Luella. Oh, there is one question here from Marcy. Oh, this is such a great question. I don't know if you can see this in chat, Leanne, so let me just read it. Okay. this is from Marcy Halpin, and she asked, is there a central location that lists wellness resources on campus for faculty and students?
Students,
There,
not that I'm aware of, but the faculty stuff is all on the human resources page.
there,
Is that what she meant?
well, somebody can correct me on this. I'm gonna, if somebody remembers it quick where it is, tell me. I think it's in student counseling.
Oh,
Let me see if they have a really nice,
both because Doug's there, but I know that a lot of it is also on human resources. We went to a new, they changed the wellness page, but again, it's not super active.
I don't know. I just remember seeing
I
this.
bet Doug has the student stuff. Is that what you're looking at?
No, I got it. I found it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna share it real quick, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. It's this one, was the one that I was thinking of. Marcy, is this sort of what you were thinking about? Yeah, so the resources on,
Resources or activities that the wellness committee is doing. Which one is she looking for?
I don't know. Marcy, can you unmute yourself and that would make,
I can't see what you're sharing.
oh, you can.
I'm only seeing Leanne's presentation still.
Oh, okay. Here, I'm gonna have, let's see here.
If it's, Marcia, are you looking for student resources or what the wellness committee?
Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, in particular, student resources. If there's maybe a PDF that we can throw up on in our courses, or just student resources in general. I know. I'm thinking there was a lot of confusion about what was available to students when we went into shutdown last year or last spring, and I was. Well, I know the provost sent out sort of a list of these things are still available and open. I was also thinking something that I didn't know if it was still open was the student food pantry. Like, I know that's open to students in a regular time, but it was unclear to me whether this, with all of the social distancing and shutdowns, if the food pantry was still available to students during sort of the COVID shutdown and stay at home orders. Because I know some students that lost jobs and were, maybe living further away, and they were having a hard time getting groceries and things like that. And so just knowing whether some of those things are open, I don't know, just knowing the resources and where they're available, or at least knowing where to point students for resources. Mm-hmm. So yes, indeed, some of this stuff is knowing that that's there, that this list here is definitely helpful. I didn't know that this list existed in a central place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great point, because again, we're not communicating this to students, right? If we don't know, the students don't know. So these are ideas that need to be, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, figured out, how can we get this stuff out to them?
I mean, it's very possible that students are showed this website during their orientation, but if the faculty don't know it's there, I mean,
right.
I wouldn't know I might know to point them to student counseling services or student health and say there are lots of resources in the community, but to be able to actually say, hey, here's the central website, go here and to look for things.
You just make me think, like something like this, when we're talking about presentations, somebody can go into, the 200 level classes, the intro class, and say, 10 minutes, bring that up. Here this is. And the more places people see things and hear them, the more likely they already use them. They're going to remember them, because they can get it in orientation, but then they go here and they go there. Oh, they forget. Then they need it. And it needs to be, out there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's on the new Canvas pages for our classes, there, like on the front page is a link for student resources, and a lot of it's for IT tech or other things, but certainly I think it would make sense to link this page into student resources on all of our Canvas pages.
That's a good idea.
All right.
All right.
I
I
wanted
do-
to, is it okay if I share something really quickly?
Yes, do. Yes.
Okay.
And we should probably move on to Luella.
Okay, I wanted to let the group know that I know that the pantry, the Warrior Pantry, has a Facebook page that a lot of students follow. When we were in shutdown mode, they were posting, I think it was weekly or bi-weekly updates on what food was available to students and what times they were available to check out food and other like toiletry type of stuff for students. And so maybe recommending to students to follow that page would be really helpful. I'll also just share that the foundation has hardship funding available, like one-time scholarship funding that is available. We've had some students reach out to us during, I guess, shutdown or quarantine, expressing financial hardship, and to access those funds, they just need to meet with Dr. Hansen or the Vice President of Student Affairs, Andy, to just kind of explain their situation, and we can see how we can help them in accessing that funding.
Good. And I will just point out that we'll have a wellness page for faculty, just specifically for faculty, with these videos on them, and the resources that Leanne and Luella and the other speakers want to send our way, and then things like the links to the food pantry and counseling. And so that's super easy to set up. So we will have that, and then if there are other things that you want to put on that, let me know and we'll put it on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Terrific. All right, Luella, are you ready?
I'm ready. I am. Well, and I do apologize for number one, I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm only on my phone. You may or may not appreciate the impact of that, but it's very annoying to me. I also feel a little humble to follow Dr. Wiggins, and her presentation is very formal and organized. I do think it's a great conversation and baseline presentation around the bigger picture for living with and through this the pandemic. In my previous life, I was a grief counselor, and so I look at the world through a lens of loss and grief. And so being invited to have an opportunity to kind of talk about this time that we're in the context of loss, it's important, I think, and I thank you, Rachel, for asking me to talk. It's my first time. I'm new to the college, so I hope that I can use my I'm new card for my the more informal nature of my presentation, if you will. So my goal would be that after this presentation, that you'd have a better understanding of grief, the role of grief in this context of the pandemic, and to improve your or to help increase your awareness of the impact of loss on many levels, for you personally, for you as a faculty, instructor, people who are being of service to others, and just in general, being aware of grief in its fine experience, I guess I would say. So I usually start with defining grief as a normal emotional response to loss. I think as a culture, we don't like to talk about it, right? We talk about it when it comes to the doorstep, right? So I've worked in hospice for many, many years, and that's where we have some sort of implicit permission to have the conversation about grief. Grief is connected to anything that we experience as a loss. I'm going to talk a little bit more about concrete abstract losses in a second, but I do want to just say that as a normal emotional response to loss, it is unique, intimate, and personal to each individual. which makes it tricky, I think, because what works for one person to cope with their losses may not work for another, right? But in our culture, we give permission to recognize and honor and talk about those concrete losses. So someone that you love died. Okay, we can give space for that. What we also appreciate about loss is that it can be abstract, right? So it's not something that's necessarily concrete, but it's more experiential. I have, and I'm going to give you some examples in the context of the pandemic, but just in general, loss can be concrete, it can be abstract, it can be compounded, which means more than one loss or one concrete loss and several other abstract losses connected to that. It can be complicated. And, you know, what does that look like? Well, my loved one went into the ER and never came home. And when I did have an opportunity to FaceTime with my person before they died, they were connected to all these tubes and those kinds of often very, very traumatic experiences. So in the context of the pandemic where people are sick and people are dying, this is one of those conversations that I'm particularly mindful of. I really, in the beginning, when you hear the numbers of people dying, millions of people infected, hundreds of thousands of people dying, that is a lot of death, right? So we hear about it, we see it, maybe you have someone in your life who has been sick and who has died, but the pandemic brings with it life, death, and loss. And therefore, it also brings that emotional response. And I know that you talked a little bit about loss, Dr. Wiggins, and anxiety. And I just watched the president's, one of her presentations here, and she talked about anxiety, so that emotional turmoil that we can be in this time. And it can be linked to the losses that we experience, right? So someone in our family died, that's a loss. We didn't get a chance to say goodbye to them. That makes it complicated. They were in the hospital and I never saw them again after I dropped them off at ER. That can be traumatic. So those multiple layers of emotional response to the death of someone from this experience. I think much of what I see as being faculty and being new, and observation with students and the phenomena of having to leave campus and go to online learning. I mean, those are more abstract losses, right? So the normalcy is lost. My social support systems are lost, or different now. I mean, they may still exist, but they look different. We don't have that social support. And for our students, those losses are compounded because they had to leave campus. Were they going to lose their money? So the financial implications also can be very abstract. I just see this in the context of the pandemic and the virus and the ongoing conversations about how it's being handled and the constant reporting about the numbers and the tension around how we're navigating this as a culture, that can result in vicarious grief. So I hear those stories and I hear the narrative, and I'm impacted by that because I have a heart and I am a person, and that matters to me, right? So grief, it can be very complex, and especially now, it's not always that concrete someone in your life has died, but it's those other places where you've had loss, loss of normalcy, loss of your organizing principle to get up every day and go to the office. Yeah, you have to recalibrate your work life, your work zone. If people are furloughed, or if people are laid off, or their job goes away, or their business closes because they can't sustain, all of those are losses, and loss upon loss upon loss is a lot. And so to link into well-being and self-care, how do we navigate that as individuals, as professionals, as human beings in the paths that we walk and in the groups that we interact with, right? So I think, it's not complex, but not everybody can or is interested in being the person who can support someone who's in a grief experience. And that's okay. I mean, that really is okay. In fact, it's important if people can recognize they're not the one. But so being aware of who can be there for support. I was curious, Dr. Wiggins made reference to accessing the social work department for support services. And, as social workers, that's a part of what we might be able to do, is helping people navigate the emotional experience around all the change, all the loss that has been kind of thrust upon us, right? We didn't choose this. So it makes it even more tricky, I think, to navigate the grief experience if it was unplanned and unexpected and you didn't know it was coming. So how are you as an individual coping? How do you take care of yourself? Great content around that, just with Dr. Wiggins. I appreciated listening to her discussion. But how are you taking care of yourself, finding a way to do that fits for you? And then to be the person who is in a position where you are interacting with other individuals who are also living with their own response to this experience, right? Their own grief, their own uncertainties, their own losses. How do you navigate that as a faculty, as staff? And so part of what my message to people is always, it's not complicated. It really isn't complicated. It's just about being able to recognize that this is a part of the experience of living in this time, acknowledging that each of us has our own individual response to it, and being able to validate that. When people talk to me about feeling lost or lonely or unsure or anxious or sad and sorrowful, of course you are. How could you not be in the context of the time that we're living in? Everything is different. Everything has changed. And the other part is we have no idea how long this is going to go on. So that sense of how much longer is also a part of that discussion. And so one of the things that I encourage you to appreciate is that being aware of it as faculty and as people of service, recognizing it, validating people in their experience, and appreciating if you're not the one who can support someone in this time, then finding a way to refer them to someone who can create space for them to process that experience, talk about it. Or not everybody is a verbal processor, so helping them figure out, how do I manage this emotional experience to shift it and make way for balance and healing. And some of those for us, for institutional employees, maybe we have our ECAP program that we could access if we need personal individual support. Counseling or therapy, pastoral counseling, peer support, right? I think that, as far as directing or referring students to the support that they might find useful, again, recognizing that they might need support, but helping them figure out what's the most useful for them and directing them in those places and in those, to those spaces where they can get the support. For example, the student counseling program, again, pastoral, institutional pastoral support if that's available, grief support groups. I know that in my former life as a grief counselor program coordinator, I would have probably facilitated a COVID grief response group, because I feel like there's a place for that. And the nice thing about those kinds of peer support experiences, especially now with the technology, those can be done online. So there's formal support, there's informal support, but mostly it's about, you know, being able to be aware of the experience, take care of yourself in the experience, and be aware that other people are also having an experience, whether they can name it or not, and to help find a way for them to cope with and process their emotions in response to this huge, unprecedented loss phenomenon that we're living through. So I think that's all I have in terms of content. Does anybody have any questions, feedback, thoughts, ideas? Am I still online?
Yes, you are still here, and thank you for that. That was really wonderful. Are there questions for Luella? Either by chat or just unmute yourself. I'll be the asker of question that has come up before. So a faculty commented that one of the, almost ironically, one of the forms of loss was the loss of being able to console or show compassion in the way that as faculty we are accustomed to do so. And so through Zoom, it's not, it's, you know, you can't give the hug and you can't give the, it's harder to show the warmth. Do you have any thoughts about, and that then adds to an additional, that's the ironic, it adds to an additional sense of loss. Here's a student who is devastated and you can't even show the way that you're accustomed to the support to that student. So,
yeah, I guess what I would say to that is we have to kind of recalibrate what support looks like at this time, right? And I don't necessarily have an answer, but I guess I think, you know, finding a way to be as creative as possible with how we support people. And, you know, especially those people who are not verbal processors or who may be more receptive to that sort of tactile, comforting kind of thing. You know, some of those responses and experiences, it's not, there's no one answer to it, right? But I think that really working with individuals to find the way that works for them in the context of it's really different now, right? So my friends at my previous job, they're now doing grief groups online. And so there is that part that does not happen because we're not in the same, you know, space and time, or if we are, we still cannot. I mean, it just looks differently now. But I don't think that that means that we can't be compassionate. I don't think it means that we can't empathize and encourage people to feel what they're feeling and, you know, find a way that allows them to express their emotions that's consistent with where we are right now. Does that make sense?
yeah, that's excellent. Are there other questions for Luella? All right, well, I'd like to thank both of our guests today. I think we got really fortunate between yesterday and today, where yesterday we really focused on the domains of wellness, and today the big picture on campus down to really the personal. Hey, Bucky, give me a minute, honey. Yeah.
Out of count.
Okay. So, there's some serendipity in that, and I just really appreciate both Leanne and Luella today, and the speakers yesterday for being able to come and talk about their own perspectives on wellness. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and I see that it's 1 o'clock right now, or almost 1 o'clock. I'm stopping the recording. Here we go.